There are lots of amazing jewelry findings out there for finishing the ends of bracelets, especially if you have bracelets that have peyote stitching or looming. There are some gorgeous ways and really wonderful ways of finishing them, but the problem is they often have to be the exact right width for your bracelets. Today I'm going to show you how you can take any width bracelet and make a closure with leather that will perfectly fit. Hi there, Sandy here. Welcome to another jewelry making video at keepsakecrafts.net. So here's a bracelet that I ended up not having a clasp that would work with for my size. So there is a way that you can finish this even if you don't have any clasps whatsoever. If you have snaps, if you have a button and a little bit of leather or faux leather, ultra suede will work. You can use this technique. So there's a bit of thread left on the end of my bracelet. If there's not, you can just tie on another piece. And what I am going to do is some weaving, but a different kind of weaving, kind of the more traditional sort that you think of when you think of weaving. And that I am going to do over, under all of these threads. And I'm going to go back and forth and basically weave a little section that will give me area to glue onto or into something. So just like those pot holders maybe you once made, you went under one, and if you went under it before, you went over it, you go over it this time. And I'm using the Nymo thread that I have here. But if I were to tie on a fresh piece of thread, I might actually opt to tie on something a little bit thicker, just so that my weaving would go a little bit faster. Come on. There we go. Over, under, over. It's a little bit of a pain here on the very ends because the ends of the loom are in the way. But you just carry on weaving until you have a section done. Somewhere around, I'd say at least 1/8 of an inch, probably 1/4 of an inch is ideal. I've done my about 1/4 inch of weaving back and forth with the thread. Don't forget to double up your thread to make it go twice as fast. In order to give myself some space for this weaving, I did first crunch down these beads really hard, so that I would have a little bit more room to work. And now I'm going to shift them back up and try to space them a little bit more nicely for the final piece. So that's a little trick that you can gain yourself a bit of room and leeway. But before you do this next step, which involves gluing, be sure that you respace them out again, because otherwise they'll be kind of glued in that position, and you don't want that. So this really helps just to do this. Okay, that feels nice, so good. Now we can use some glue. I don't have any at the moment. I'm waiting on an order of some hypo cement, which has a much thinner viscosity and would be better for this. Or super new glue would be good. Or even thin super glue. I like the gel for some of my other work. So this is what I have, but this will work. Now, what you want to pay attention to here, you want to do it carefully. Oh, and by the way, when I finished the weaving, I just did a little knot here on the end. Because we're going to glue everything, you don't have to do more than that. There. And I'll give that a trim just to get it out of my way. Okay, so what you want to pay attention to here when you're gluing is you want to try not to get glue on this last row of beads, and you also don't want to get glue up on this bar. You really just want it on these threads. So just take your time, use the tip of the bottle, and kind of work the glue into that weaving. This is why a glue with a thinner viscosity is better, because it'll just like seep down in there. Because this is what basically is going to hold your bracelet together. Then let that dry completely before you move on. So I've let the glue sit for a while, and now it is completely dry, and you can remove your piece from the loom. Just slide that bar out. And you can actually trim those. You don't really need those anymore because they are glued in place. And there. And being able to pull these pins out is why we didn't want to get glue on them. Now there are different findings that you can use to finish this. However, I made a calculation error and counted on a different clasp for this. So I am going to have to finish this with leather. That way I can custom make the size that I need. If you don't have a friend to help you take this measurement, use a tape measure. Just lay it down, put your bracelet on it, and then use the tape measure to do the wrapping. And I can just do the figuring. You want to measure from that edge of the beads. You don't want to include your little woven bit in there. So it looks to me like I need 1 7/8. I'm going from right there, 8 1/8, all the way to 10. And that will give me a comfortably fitting bracelet. So I need 1 7/8 inches filled in here. So here are the steps I followed to figure out the sizes of the 2 pieces of leather I need. First of all, I laid my bracelet on some graph paper and got an idea of how wide I want my strips of leather to be. So we'll just mark, one line. Lay that on, and I'm going to cut it just a tiny bit wider than the actual bracelet. So right about here. I think having it a little generous looks better than having it be a little bit skimpy. Now, if you remember from my measurement, I said I wanted the leather to take up 1 7/8 inches. This graph paper happens to be in 5mm segments, which is fine. I actually love millimeters for jewelry making because fractions will make you crazy. But I did end up with 1 7/8, and that's okay. We'll work with it. There is a little bit of wiggle room. It's not utter precision, but the closer you get, the better it's going to fit, the happier you'll be. All right, so there's my 1 7/8 that I want to be basically from here to here. I found a button that I like, that I think goes with my bracelet. It's actually perfect because it the reflection changes from green to purple. I found this on Art Beads. I don't know if they have it anymore. I'll link to some similar ones. When this is closed, I want my button to pretty much be centered. So about there. So I'll just draw around that. Which means I want the piece of leather with a button to go to about here. So we'll call this the B piece for button. And I'm going to measure this in millimeters because, like I said, fractions will make you crazy. That is 33 millimeters. So times 2, because we're going to fold it, equals 66 millimeters for one piece. Now the other piece, the way that's going to work, it's going to have a loop of suede in the edge that will catch the button. So I'm actually going to want, this is just my scrap of faux leather that I'm working with. I'm going to want it to come to close to the center of the button. I don't want there to be a gap in the leather when it's closed. So if my button goes here, I want this to be just shy of the center but it will probably back off a little bit because of the length of the button loop. So right about there, I would say, is where I want that. So let's say right there. So this measurement is my loop side, which is, nope, not inches, 24, 23, 24 millimeters. I think that's crooked, so we'll say 24 millimeters times 2 equals 48 millimeters. And this, if we measure from the outsides of the line, we'll say 42 millimeters. So I want 2 pieces of leather, one 42 by 66 and one 42 by 48. And that is what I have here. And just to double check my math and my cutting and make sure it's right, if I fold this one in half, it fits nicely in that spot. Perfect. And if I fold this one in half, it fits right here. And then my button will go there. And I think that will look really cool. Now what we need to do is mark this smaller piece, the one that's going to have the loop, for the placement of the loop. So I'm going to fold this in half with the inside out, place it on here. I had a white marking pencil. Okay, I don't anymore. But it's here and here is where I want to cut little slots for my leather. I just want to take a moment here to say thank you so much to those of you who are my patrons. It makes a huge difference in whether or not I keep making videos for YouTube. If you enjoy my videos and you've found them helpful or encouraging, you might want to check out Patreon, where my patrons have the opportunity to get up to 2 bonus videos every month. But no worries, I plan to always keep these YouTube videos free for everyone. And I'll fold it the other way because the slot really should go that way. Just open it up just enough so I can get my leather through. I have to use a little toothpick and just poke that down in there into that slot. There we go. Just like that. And on this side, see if I can find it. Okay, right there. Poke the other end through. This would work great with Ultra Suede as well. Now I want to test just how big I need to make that loop. Definitely not that big. Yeah, like that. It really doesn't need to be huge. I'm going to kind of untwist it. We don't need to use that much. That'll do, so I can fit that through. And like I said, it'll kind of pop over just a little bit because of the length of the loop. So the shorter you make the loop, the better. As long as you can get your button through there. Perfect. So now we have a little bit of gluing to do. I've got some paper down here just to protect my work surface, and E6000 is great for this because it's flexible when it dries instead of drying hard, which really wouldn't be a nice feel for a piece of jewelry. And what I want to do right now is just glue that suede where I want it. That's the only thing I'm going to do right now. Don't stick it in the glue. Fold it over again, make sure it's just right, and only glue one side. Don't get the glue on the right side of your leather. Get that on there and let that dry. While that's drying, we can also add the other piece. Now, if you wanted to get real fussy, the seamstress part of me doesn't want the thread from the button to show on the right side, on the other side. So what you would do is mark that and then sew it on now and then glue this closed. There's another part of me that says to heck with that, and I'm just going to sew it through both layers. Sorry, because I just can't. Now I'm going to take some of this E6000 and just put it on the very edge. So whatever width you have here of your weaving, just put that much E6000 on the edge. You can go a little beyond the edge. Don't get it on the front of your leather. Do get these like edges right here. They're easy to miss. And so just kind of be mindful of the fact that there's glue all over this. I'm going to get a fresh piece of paper. I'm going to place this and kind of sneak it up on there. Because what I want to do is get this lined up so it's centered this way. And it looks like I might have cut that a little wide, and that's okay. Get these all in place. Just kind of arrange those beads, make them behave, make them go right where you want them to be. So the leather should be just touching that last row of beads, not overlapping it. You don't want to get any glue on that last row of beads. And I'm just going to peel this up. And leave this alone and let that dry completely. Once the glue is dry on this piece, you can repeat to add this piece to the other side. Once the glue is dry on the first side, you can now add glue to the entire half of the piece, especially getting it right on those threads, but not on the beads. That is the tricky part. And if you have an idea of where your button's going to go, you might want to try to leave that part kind of free of glue, because you'll just probably have to use pliers to sew through. If you have to sew through the glue, you'll just use pliers to pull your needle through. But get right up to those edges and not beyond. So this is a step where you really need to take your time so that you don't make an utter mess, because the glue can be pretty messy. But this is what's holding your bracelet together. So once you have it on there, you can just fold it. I use my awl to kind of get those threads, not the beads, just the threads kind of tucked up in there. And repeat on the other side. Sew on your button. So here is my bracelet all done with the glue on the leather dry. And let's see how my math worked out. Pretty good. That fits pretty much exactly the way I hoped it would, with that button centered and just a nice fit around the rest. Here's another piece I did with suede finishing on the ends. And here's a tip for you that I realized after making this one. Don't use the Nymo for the weaving. Really, don't. This one's kind of fun. I did looming, and then in between I did weaving with embroidery floss, just your over, under. And I realized that embroidery floss would make a much quicker and more heavy selvage. That's what this is called, this little bit of weaving on the ends. So use something a little heavier like pearl cotton or embroidery floss to do your weaving. For this one, I will probably use some nice black ultra suede. You can buy it like this in these 5x7 pieces. Probably the least expensive way to buy it would be to buy yardage, but that's only if you're going to use a lot. This is a nice assortment. I will link to places where you can get assortments in all colors.